Okay, so here's my goal for today, technologically speaking, and I appreciate everybody bearing with me. So you'll see one of the panels in the gallery is this whiteboard over here, and we're going to have some spreads appear over there in a little bit. So my goal is that once we get to that part, you'll be able to see that or me as you wish. Just making sure everybody's here. Great. Is there anybody left in there? So does that make sense? If it does, feel free to leave me a note over here in the chat. I know everybody is probably on mute, which I appreciate because of the ambient noise. Great, thank you so much. Okay, I think we're all here. Thank you, honey. Hopefully we have everything under control. You know me, I'm a people person, so it's weird for me to have to rely on the technology. Okay, so again, for folks who are just arriving, if you look in the gallery of faces, if you want to see anything in particular, you'll notice that there's one that says action cam, which is hilarious because the action cam in this case is this actually this inert surface. And that is where I'm going to be putting down some information about spreads. Someone else is requesting the link, so give me just a second. It should be. If you have any questions about spreads or reading or anything, feel free to use this time. Thanks, Jill. Feel free to use this time to throw it in the chat bar. La, 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 la. Hilariously, I watched the 1973 Wicker Man last night, which I hadn't seen in years, and I have all of this really charming, cheesy, like pagan music. It's the cheesiest soundtrack, and it's like running in my head nonstop. So you should just make sure that this citizen is taken care of. What's your email? La, la, da, 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 da. And of course, I only know some of the words in those songs, so that's part of the joy. Oh, we gotta let April in. Alrighty. Hi, April. So welcome. We've got one more little lost lamb who's trying to get in here. Great. This is your chance to get yourself some tea or have a preemptive potty break, whatever it is you need to do so I can get this person into the class. They are, oops, nope, that's not you. I hope that's not super loud for everybody. Okay. I think they're taken care of. I hope they're taken care of. And hilariously, I have got 5 lamps, a computer, 2 computers, a camera, and a cell phone in order to do something that is fundamentally analog, which is tarot. Okay, I think we're all here. So once we get to the working with spreads part, I will have some little diagrams over here. As always, feel free to ask me any kind of questions, and I'm just gonna start to talk. So today we're gonna be working on exploring techniques and spreads. We have touched on this a little bit in the past as far as material for the class. The important thing to know is that with everything in the tarot, there is no one way to do these things. You know, the tarot, while it is very ancient, and as I have said, it is an evolving art form. It is very much made by the people who are using the technology at all times. So if you find something that works for you, do that thing. I am today going to give you some starter information to get you launched on your journey or make you more comfortable finding your own way. Some folks really thrive on structure and strive with feeling like they have their toes in tradition, and other folks like to just freeform it. The tarot totally works for folks of both dispositions. I'm a talky Gemini, and I like to sort of do things in a freeform way with an eye to how things have been done in the past. So I'm going to encourage you to build on the foundations that you get. We have spent the last few sessions exploring some of the specifics of specific cards. And I know that most of you have been able to be there for both of those sessions. And I have those links for you. If you missed them, I can share them with you so that you are able to catch up. But today, rather than talking about specific cards, or you might say rather than talking about the individual personalities and identities of the cards, we're going to talk about what procedures work best for us when it comes to actually reading and interpreting them. When we say a tarot spread, what we mean in general is how we choose to lay these images out in patterns that assist us in reflecting on our questions. So spread is just a little bit of lingo to describe how we choose to spread the cards around. Did she get it? Oh, my gal's in the waiting room. Boop. There we go. Okay, so welcome, Amy. So spreads are just how we lay the cards out. Again, you can do this very freeform. You can do this very specifically. In my researches today, in order to expand on what I was already bringing to the class, I have to say I found some incredibly elaborate spreads. So as you get comfortable with a 1-card spread and a 3-card spread and a 5-card spread and a 7-card spread, if you are a person who really wants to go for it, I came across some very Baroque spreads that had over 20 cards in them. So you can really get deep in the weeds on this. Today, for the purposes of working together, we're going to keep it down to the amount of cards that you can hold in like 1 or 2 hands. By the way, when we say reading the cards, some people say interpret the cards, and it's also an old idiom to say throw the cards. So I may use those expressions interchangeably. And the way that I came up in tarot, we call it tarot or tarot interchangeably. You may also hear somebody say tarot, or in the South, tarot. So it's all the same thing. It takes all sorts and all ways to describe. Again, there's an unlimited number of spreads that are possible, and it just comes down to what works for you. We're going to start by talking about technique. And by what I mean here by technique is really the strategy that you as an individual choose to employ to shift your consciousness from your day-to-day busy, multitasking, aware of everything, full proprioception kind of mindset to being fully present in the interpretive moment. It might be considered a meditative state. It certainly is a receptive state. So technique for me in this case is really just a way to describe how we as individuals choose to affect those changes. Everybody's techniques will vary depending on how your awareness works and your temperament. You can think of it as how you as a tarot person, tarot practitioner, choose to shape the outer space that you're going to work in and also the inner space that you want to work in. Some people are very formal, some people are more homey. Every good reader that I have had the pleasure of working with has some kind of inward protocol, at the very least, that they follow to get into the zone. Ritual allows us to open the doors to our sort of inner laboratory or the inner temple and access our empathy, our sense of service, and our intuition, all of which are important to feeling like you're doing more than just reading out of the little white book. Some of those outer actions, and you are certainly welcome to elaborate for yourself. Some of those outer actions of preparing your workspace may include like seining or smudging or clarifying your space, putting down a fancy tablecloth, lighting candles or putting out your crystals, you know, whatever your sort of elemental symbols and ritual objects are. It may be saying certain words. Some of the old sort of Golden Dawn era people, you know, they would hold their deck and hold their ritual sword over it and they would do certain incantations. It may just be sort of lowering your voice when you're speaking with a client to get out of your day-to-day busy work sing-song into something a little bit more conscious. So some of these things may seem very woo-woo to you, or they may really suit you. It depends where you are in your choices about how you choose to express this aspect of yourself. As a kitchen witchy kind of homey person, I tend to keep a low profile on the outside of what I'm doing. Like I will look for a clean work surface. and I will be aware of how I'm situating my physical body relative to the person I might be working with. But I do a lot more of the preparation in terms of my inner landscape. And again, this, you may find that you do both. Internal actions for preparing the workspace for tarot, technique-wise, may include altering your breathing, trying to really arrive physically in your person. For me, I definitely become very aware, you might say conscious or meditative on my hands, because they are the physical agent for me of connecting with the cards and the other person. Internally, you may be almost calibrating, as it were, to be focused on, again, empathy, receptivity, humility, a mindset of service. You may respond to the notion that, like the priestess in the traditional tarot, she's sitting in front of the veil between the pillars, and that, it's as if you're preparing to part that veil to see between the worlds and be able to gather some information. Some folks internally, you may be actively and dynamically requesting some kind of guidance from whatever floats your intuitive boat, your god or gods, the elements, your ancestors. If you have more of less of a magical mindset and more of a psychological mindset about the cards, you might be thinking, let me be able to access, my deep intuitive mind. Let me connect with my intuition, my instincts. So some kind of preparing the internal landscape as far as looking for guidance. These inner and outer rituals are to allow you to set aside the busy work person and lean into your intuitive self. And of those techniques, you will find for you what you need under ideal circumstances, what you can do on the fly, and when you really can't function as a reader very effectively without it. As somebody who has done a lot of like corporate gigs and party gigs and so forth, where I'm reading cards for lots of people, near the bar or in the circus and so forth, you may really need to figure out what works for you inwardly in order to create a very small, intimate, and perhaps sacrosanct space to work with someone. Again, some of these things can seem really formal, ritualistic, or woo-woo. You maybe you're a little bit more Discordian and freeform. It's really just about making an intentional, clear space internally and externally so that you can be of assistance and dialed in. As I have mentioned in many classes before, the technique that one of my dear friends employs when she is reading, she gets the cards, she holds them close, she states her question or her intention loud and clear, and then she throws the cards in the air. They fall all over the ground, and then she picks up the ones that are on the floor, and those are the ones that she reads. So you can see that's much more of a free-form way to approach it as compared to some of the more elaborate spreads that we talked about at the beginning. So in my case, what I do, and what I have witnessed from working with other tarot teachers, when I'm working with another person, caveat, I mostly read cards for other people. I rarely read them for myself. If I want a reading, I usually get it from someone else close to me, not because of any superstition per se, but I just find I am more receptive to the information if it is being shared with me as part of a shared experience. So you can definitely read cards for yourself. When I am reading cards, I try to find a neutral mindset. I shuffle my deck, clear the cards. Just think of, and I'm not chatting about the grocery list. I'm not chatting about parking my car. When I'm shuffling, I'm usually trying to conscientiously clear the energy of the cards. I don't know a science-based way to describe that, but that notion, clear the cards. Then, once they are clear, they've just been sort of randomized, I will hand them to the querent, or I will hold them myself with the question in mind that is going to be addressed. We have touched in the past on one of the great challenges of reading for people is actually assisting folks in creating their questions, because they may come to you and say, tell me what to do. What's it like with my love life? These are very open-ended questions. So you may find you have to offer some guidance in terms of helping them be clear what they're actually asking so that you can actually hope to answer it. Once they're clear, I will have them shuffle. If you're not a person who wants other people to touch your cards, that's totally fine. Again, you may want to make sure that you are clear what it is. Shuffling happens. I or they then divide the pack into 3 piles. I use my non-dominant hand for this because of the rather charming and magical thinking that the non-dominant hand is going to be connected to the less rational part of your brain, more of the intuitive part of your mind. So with the non-dominant hand, I'll divide it into 3 piles. And then sometimes I will do that. I'll regroup them, do it 3 times total. And that is a nod to the old-fashioned ways of dividing the cards. It gives me a moment to sort of say, this is my nod to my ancestors in tarot, because now I'm going to do it the way that I want. Then I will or I will ask the querent to rub their hands together. And while they're doing this, I am usually fanning the cards out on the table. I'll just take them in a nice spread. If I am doing the reading, sometimes I will also actually, in the non-COVID times, I would actually wet my palms just a little bit, just in the very center, because I can feel the energy in the middle of my palms more when I do that. I won't do it ostentatiously so the other person doesn't have to look at it, but I will usually, they're rubbing their hands and I have done that, and my hands are palms up under the table or on my knees, again, as unostentatiously as possible. I'm not trying to make them feel weird about it. They have fanned, or they have rubbed their hands together. We have fanned the cards out, and I will ask them with their non-dominant hand to feel across the cards and slide out the cards that they connect with. Some folks have never had any experience with anything like this where they're feeling something from cards and they may need a little guidance. Is it warm? Is it cold? Is it tingly? If they seem unnerved, one of the techniques that I use to work with folks who are uncertain how to approach this in that moment, I say, think of it as you would holding a seashell to your ear. As a kid, you think, I can hear the ocean. As an adult, you think, I can hear the sound of my own blood channeling through my body. I can hear that reflected back to me. And I think of that the same with the cards. It's not that the cards are intrinsically magic and they're shooting lasers up into the querent's hand, unless that's what you think. It's rather, I will tell the nervous person that they're feeling their own heat and energy bouncing up, and that is going to give them the indicator. So you feel your person out. Once they know, they slide their cards out face down. You want them face down because if the first card they pull, they flip it over and it's some sort of card with a gasp element, then they are then potentially triggered as they pull the other cards. You'd rather keep it nice and neutral. I will flip, and while they're sliding their cards out, my internal landscape, I'm actually consciously thinking, let me be a conduit of information for this person. I have a big personality. I do a lot of things. This is a place for me to set that aside and just try to become a conduit of information. It's not about me. It's not about you as a reader. It's about trying to help them understand these symbols and this tradition and how it can empower them. So I'm always thinking, let me be a conduit for this person. Sometimes if the reading is tough, I might even be thinking, I hope there's good news for this person, but let me be a conduit for the facts. So in this way, I'm trying to move the energy for them. Then we flip the cards, then we talk it through, and we pull more cards as needed. Some folks will automatically want to gather the rest of the deck up as soon as they pull their cards. I try to discourage that because you may find that you need to pull more cards as you go. So that is how my personal card reading technique working with a person one-on-one has gone. Just checking to make sure everybody's in the room. Yep, great. Okay. So some of the other variations of technique that are fairly common when it comes to the actual, this personal ritual, as it were, or this protocol, you might call it. Sometimes the reader lays down all the cards and does not let the querent touch them. For one set of reasons or the other, that's totally fine. My teacher, Kate Nordstrom, used to do this very cool thing where she would hand you the deck and just flip it over and just have you kind of scan through it. You weren't actually, there was no registering where the cards were in the deck, but the theory, the way she had been taught, was that you were giving your deep, clever mind a chance to figure out where the cards were in the deck that would best assist you. So you sort of scan through all 78 really fast, regather them, and then they would do the reading. Just a way to say, hey cards, it's me. She found that was a very empowering way to let the people feel like they were making informed choices on a subconscious level. Also, we've mentioned in the past, another way to sort of extend your tarot reading technique is to use more than one deck at a time. I would not advise using more than one deck of the same kind of card. Like you may, if you've got a fairy tarot and a cat people tarot, maybe you could use them both to address different aspects of the question. Or there's the Lenormand deck, which is a whole totally different system of cartomancy. There's plenty of tradition around using more than one deck at a time. So that's a technique that works for some folks. And we'll talk more about this as we start leaning into the conversation about how spreads work. But one of the things, of course, that you can do is instead of just saying, hey, cards, and spread them out, you're saying, this card goes into this position, this card goes into this position, this card goes into this position. And those positions have designated function, as we will see as we move forward. So consider, if you don't already have an active tarot practice, consider what you think might work for you as you begin to develop this inner and outer protocol as far as reading goes. One of the ways that you can develop something very efficient that works for you is by doing a little bit of tarot every day. And you may, if you're a person who really likes a lot of sort of ceremonial approach, you may find that you still only really have time for that. Maybe during this time, you'll have lots of time. Maybe during a different time period in your life, you will only have, a few minutes for it a day. So you will sort of be able to ebb and flow and figure out the approach to the protocol that works for you. So when you are developing this daily tarot habit, what you can choose to do is the one card pull. So that is basically a daily meditation, or it is a way to get a quick bit of advice while you develop a familiarity with your cards. You develop your own little ritual protocol, whatever that is. It gives you the opportunity to deepen your knowledge and familiarity with the cards with a daily pull. You pull a card every day, maybe at the same time, maybe when you're brushing your teeth, maybe when you go to bed at night. Maybe you do it when you're in traffic. If you are a person who still has to go somewhere, you're driving to the hospital, whatever, with gloves. If you pull cards every day, you will develop a different understanding of them because you will see the same card come up over and over and over for you. And so keeping a bit of a tarot journal is going to be useful for you. You may find that you become very good friends with 30 cards in the deck over the course of 6 months, and that you hardly ever talk to the other 48 cards in the deck because they are not yet relevant to your experience. So it's a great way to sort of map yourself out. Once you pull a card every day, spend some time looking at it. Like study on it, you can read on it, read up on it, you can muse on it, like look at the symbolism and interpret it yourself. You may say, that looks like my cat, or, I totally have this face. You can dream on it, you can put it up in your mirror in your bathroom, so while you're brushing your teeth, you're looking at it, and again, journal it. As Stevie Postman and Eric Ganther of the Cosmic Tribe, which is a great deck I encourage my queer positive people to look up, they said, like an MC at a variety show, the one card pull sets the tone for your day. I thought that was really charming. Now, when I did not make a visual for the one card pull. Here it is, one card. Now, when you do spreads using more than one card, they are either dinner party style, where you pull a bunch of cards out and no card has a specific job to do, a specific question to answer, or each card is designated to a specific role in the reading, which we will explain now as we move into multi-card readings. So using handy-dandy visuals, hopefully they are not going to show up as backwards on this here fancy camera. So the 3-card pull, there's a zillion different versions of that. You can see here we've got a few illustrated for you. In the many variations of this 3-card spread, it is useful for the clarity of interpretation on your part when you are pulling the cards, however you got there. Are you feeding them off the top of the deck? Are you doing this slide out of the deck that I learned from my teacher? Are you picking them up off the floor and then setting them in a position? It is useful for clarity of interpretation when you're pulling the cards that you consider the role each card is going to play in this designated pattern. You can assign nearly any multifaceted query to this sort of 3-card spread. And you can see we've got, here's my question, should I pursue action X? As I pull the card, I'm thinking, okay, this is going to be my yes answer. This is going to be my no answer. Feeling around, this is going to be my wild card. What have I not thought of? Flip them all over, interpret them, and know which one was which. That's the important part about having designated locations in those. And again, if anybody has any questions, let me know. Okay, I'm going to go back and read. Okay, do the cards need to be all aligned upward to start with? And do you lay them down in a certain way, upwards or downwards? Excellent question. Do you always ask them to have a question, or do you have a general reading also? Can you read to us what the wording is below the cards? Oh yeah, you bet. So I can answer all of those questions. So the first question here, this one says yes. This one says no. This one says wild card for the purposes of this example. And I'm sorry, my handwriting is rather poor. No calligrapher eye. The questions that were asked very wisely here were, do we do reversals? Do we worry about which way the cards are oriented in the shuffling? Do you leave them as they are or correct them? I personally do not read a lot of reversals. What that means, a reversal is when you shuffle the cards and some card ends up upside down. If you get the Lover's card, does the Lover's card upside down mean the antithesis of love? Does it mean love with obstruction? There's a whole world of reversals, and it's exciting, and I encourage you to learn more about it. I personally don't read a lot of them. I will notice sometimes if a card flies out of the deck, I will take note of that, which we call a volunteer. That's when the tarot just really had something extra to tell you. But in general, I don't really bother with reversals. I'm not worried if the cards are upside down or side down up because they get shuffled, they get moved around. And as I am flipping the cards over, I typically correct them so they are all facing the same way. My researches, I've actually read up on it, and most tarot readers go through periods of reading reversals or not. You kind of ebb and flow in and out of it as you feel necessary in the course of reading. I find because every card has its gift, every card has its shadow, it's got its sort of upside and downside, that you can usually tell which aspect is being addressed by the company it keeps. If you get a very, very happy card and it is surrounded by cards that are stressors, then you are probably talking about the best aspects of this card under stress. I don't need it to be upside down to tell me that. But you do you. And I don't worry about, therefore, getting my cards all oriented in a particular way. There's no top, there's no bottom. You will notice, however, on most tarot decks, usually they have a neutral directional back. Like in this case, on my deck, you can tell when you look at the back if it's, there it is, and sorry, it's a little glary. There it is, right side up. If that same thing showed up on your desk upside down, you would know. It's definitely directional, and that's a choice I made that reflects the way that I read. Most decks are going to have a neutral back. It'll be a sun and a moon that are sort of floating in the void, so they look the same upside down. And that is intended to make it easier for the subconscious of the reader to not be affected by the directionality of the card. So another way you can use this 3 card, so we talked about the yes, no wild card, which is a great way to get your feet wet in the world of exploring the tarot as a way to explore decision making. You can also use it to get sort of a general wellness reading for yourself, in which case this becomes body, mind, spirit. You can use this in any number of ways. It can just be, okay, I've got this job, and I'm not sure what to do. Or, should I stay with my girlfriend, or should I move out with this other person that I've been seeing? Whatever. Then you've got option 1, option 2, and your decision card. Any question that you might have, essentially, for starts, can get broken down into some 3-parter. When I first started reading cards many years ago, we did 2, like yes, no. What if I do this, or what if I do this? I was excited to break up the concept of approaching everything from a binary, and also to realize part of the tarot, it's that whole wild card. It's that notion that the Fool always has something to show you. So I'm always looking for that third thread, as it were. Also, you can see here, this one would be past, this would be present, this would be future. If you were you know, trying to get a general reading for yourself or a friend. Anything you can think of can be initially set up into sort of a 3-card chunk. This, however, is not what I would consider if I was sitting down to work with somebody for an hour, we probably would skip past this and do a more complex, a reading, a spread that had more cards in it right at the outset and build from there. But while you are getting your feet wet in this notion of decision making, I feel like this is a great way to do it with this 3-card. You can also, you know, you could build one of these and, you know, for example, if you sat down and you said, well, I've got all of these decisions to make. These are my yes, no, what if career questions. These are my yes, no, what if relationship questions. These are my yes, no, what if maintaining chronic, you know, illness questions. You could set up a number of these on this kind of simple spread on one table, and you may find in doing that you start to see patterns within those too. So even though this is kind of a quick snapshot of how you might begin your decision, like informing your decisions and drawing out more of what you know in your gut and you're trying to get a look at through the tarot, don't imagine that this 3-card spread isn't a good way to get it started. It's a choice. Now we're going to jump to something a little bit more complex. This is the 5-person dinner party, which is it's what I use most of the time, and also the Pentacle +1. So here's the Pentacle +1. Blam. This is my hilarious effort at drawing a star that is made out of cards. But we'll come back to that in a moment. The dinner party is what I do most of the time. That is what it means when you get 5 cards or more at the table. And it's as if you've invited 5 guests over and asked them their advice. It's not a matter of this. When you lay the cards down, you're not saying, you know, this is how my past influences me, and this is the issues that I have with my family, and this is about my career. That's really useful. Those are the designated roles, like you may be familiar with from things like the Celtic Cross, or indeed the 3-card pull that we just did. However, with a kitchen party, you're just inviting a bunch of these cards over and saying, hey, everybody, here's my question. What do you think? And you get 5 cards. I will usually, when they're all laid out, if I'm reading for someone else and one card is possibly alarming to someone who doesn't know, they're going, I don't know what that 10 of swords looks scary, or I'm terribly afraid of birds and that one has a bird in it. I will usually start with the most alarming card first and just sort of explain it, get it in its context, and then we move out. Then we start to look in the reading for patterns. Do we have an abundance of the same number? Do we have an abundance of the same suit? Do we have an abundance of female figures or gender non-binary figures, or an awful lot of animals, or an awful lot of people not looking directly at the viewer and they're all looking to the left-hand side? You sort of use your math brain and your logic brain, and then you move into your pattern recognition brain. And then we just talk through all of the characters and sort of get a sense of what kind, if these were the people you had invited to your pool party, what do you imagine the tone of the conversation would be? Would they be saying, dump that guy? Or would they be saying, you know, no, you've just got some stuff you need to work through here, man. It's all work. Everybody's got work to do, you know, just like you would if you had invited a bunch of your friends over. So that's the kitchen witch, you know, or the dinner party version, which I actually use most of the time when I'm actually working with clients. It may become very elaborate because once you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of these characters all in a row, and they all have a lot to tell you about how you should live your life, you may say, well, okay, but this card is confusing to me. And then you can pull another 5 cards. Or you can say, give me a little bit more clarity about this aspect, and pull another 5. And you may end up with 15 cards on the table, neatly stacked in rows of 5. And you may go, whoa, there's this pillar of empowered women that runs through the middle of this whole reading. Or everybody's clearly running off the edges of the page. Like the patterns that you will see as part of the larger reading become part of the information that you gather from having first a dinner party and then maybe a much bigger party as you have more cards on the table. So that's the dinner party, which is what I do most of the time. So over here in this pentacular, There's a lot of great books that are full of spreads that you can work with. Most of them come down to some version of 1 card, 3 card, some kind of pentacle, something that looks like a tree, something that looks like a cross. I mean, there's only so many basic geometric shapes that we can make. It's like building constellations, but with paper. So there's a lot of, or there's like a spider web, you'll find that kind of everywhere. I would say that just about everybody's got some iteration of this pentacle. And in this case, you're asking your question, or you're asking for like, what do I need to know about where my life is at right now? And you can make your pentacles inverted or whatever it is, whatever rocks your boat. But basically you're just thinking, this first spot, this is about, this is the suit of air. This is the element of air. This in my life speaks to my question, my life relative to everything that is the powers of air. That is boundaries, that is communication, that is intellect and decision making. This card right here, that number 1, is here to speak to you about air. Oh, I think I just said the wrong thing because I'm looking at everything upside down. Hold please. Earth, sorry, duh. So you're going to be going, I mean, depends on your tradition, but typically it's going to be earth, air, fire, water, spirit. That's just the way that this sort of litany of elements has come down to us over, 50 years of inherited neo-paganism. So as you move through them, you're going to go, all right, well, earth this is me and my practical stuff. This is my health, my wealth, my resources, everything that you've already been learning with the tarot. This gives you a chance to double down the information you have gathered in your study of the suits and apply it in a big way to your life. So this is me in earth, in the practical aspects of my life relative to my question. This is my ability to communicate about it, because we come to air. So then we come to fire. Fire, this is the way that my question, whatever it might be, relates to my ambition, my career, my passion, my drive, my hunger, my ability to lead, get myself and others into trouble by having brilliant ideas and then learning how to make them work in the world. And then we earth, air, fire, water, and then we come to water. So this one over here is going to be your question relative to your relationships, your emotional life. For some people, this is also where they keep their creativity and their spirituality. It's all the tender, juicy, sloshy bits that tend to make you feel like you're in love, or you're overcome with jealousy, or any of those sort of very messy feelings that have so much to do with making our lives worth living and or fuel every Shakespeare tragedy. And then there's spirit over here. This is that aspect of your life that speaks to your inner divine, if you believe in this. So this is actually the Pentacle +1, because I like to put the one in the middle as your call to action. So you've gotten this opportunity to say, okay, tarot, okay, guardian spirits, ancestors, my gods, goddesses, my subconscious, whatever works for you. I need some insight into what's going on with me in all of these different aspects of my life. Okay, but what do I do now? One of the challenges with the tarot, they always give you homework. It's like, I feel like it's a series of Polaroids, like, that's what I look like. I kind of knew that's what I look like, but what am I supposed to do? Right. So, Anne, I see your question about the cards. Did I answer it? I'm not sure. I'm sure you could type me something there. Yes, okay, I bet that's what it is. So Pentacle +1, again, any book that you look into is going to have some version of the star, the inverted star, or it may even be represented as a circle if they've got, if that's their thing. It's always something like this, but with that call to action added. How are we doing? Ooh, I got to talk a little faster. Okay, and now we go to a spread that I have spoken often of, that I enjoy very much. The credit for this spread goes to Interrobang Tarot, which has lovely art. It's very charmingly written. I highly recommend it. It's a website. Interrobang Tarot, in my opinion, this is the perfect modern revisitation of the Celtic cross. Everything that you ever got out of the Celtic cross with less muss, less fuss, and less sort of Victoriana bric-a-brac. So the Celtic cross, if you may recognize that, there's 2 cards in the middle. Then there's 4 more cards around them, and then there's this whole other pillar of cards over here. I think there's maybe 10 cards represented total. And if the Celtic Cross works for you, by all means, go for it. But I would not say it is a beginner type spread. It is elaborate. It is complicated. I feel like this one is really to the point. This is called the what the fuck spread, the WTF spread. And its charm lies not in the expletive, although it is humorous, but in that it is so efficient. The first card that you lay down is the card that says, like, what is, here I am, this is the issue I'm having, what sums it up? And then the card that gets laid across it in tarot, typically if a card gets laid across that first card, that is considered to cross you. Like, that is the thing that is making it hard for you. It expresses the limitation that is giving you trouble. So that is literally what the. Over here, number 3, we see the actual in the what the actual fuck. The actual spot, that card, that position, when you lay a card there, you're saying, what is real about this situation? So there's your actuality. Then you put it on 4. That is your F-bomb right there. What is wrong? What is so wrong in my situation that needs to be addressed? And then an interrobang, for anybody who doesn't know, it is a form of punctuation. When I grew up, we certainly never knew it had a name. It is when you have a question mark and an exclamation point side by side. That's not just called exclamation mark, question mark, together. Those are called an interrobang, which is to say it is something yelling and going, what? At the same time. So the interrobang tarot says, what the actual F-bomb? Here we have the question mark, part of your interrobang. What do I need more information about in my situation? And your exclamation point is, what can I do about this? I encourage you to actually look up the website. If I could have, I would have pieced the graphic into it, because they've made a beautiful, it's a beautiful visual that they have for this. It's literally very nice art, and it's charmingly spoken. Let me know if you have any questions about that. It's really great. So the interrobang. Everything that you ever liked about the Celtic Cross, less muss, less fuss. And from there, we're going to go right into just talking about what is involved in making your own spreads. And then if anybody, interrobang, INTERROBANG, question mark, exclamation point. Interrobang, yes, perfect, thank you. I was thinking it probably had 2 R's. From there, we're going to jump into talking about you designing your own spreads, and I will throw a few references in here for you as far as a few places you can look. Any tarot book is going to have some spreads in it, and they're going to have some version of the 1 and the 3 and the Celtic Cross, because those are the standards. There are a couple books that I use for reference today, just to try to loosen up my memory a little bit. The Cosmic Tribe, of course, is a tarot deck that I enjoy very much, by Stevie Postman. In fact, I have it right here. Cosmic Tribe. It's super LGBT positive. It sort of presages the modern queer is awesome sauce, and a lot of nudity, be warned. The writing is excellent, and there's some fun spreads in here that are worth looking into. They've got one called Doors of Perception that I had considered using today, but I wanted to stick within our time parameters. This one, Tarot Spreads, Get the Whole Story by James Rickleff. This is very dense. This is a book for somebody who wants to do a lot of really elaborate spreads. For example, so these are quite complex, and once you've decided that you're comfortable working with 6 cards, once you're comfortable working with 9 cards, then this is a good resource. I was surprised reading this book to find out that I'm in here. So I was like, hey, look, I'm on page 134, because he liked my lover's card, because it was open to all the people. Another book that if you're interested in this sort of thing, Past Life and Karma Tarot by Elaine McCoy. I don't know this person at all, but if you're interested in pursuing the notion of how you can use tarot to do a little bit of personal time travel, that's another book I'm happy to refer you to. And as always, I would say Mary Greer, Rachel Pollack, and Barbara Moore are all good resources. Now, let's talk about a few suggestions I have when it comes to you making your own spreads. For starters, keep it 7 cards or less. It's a lot of material to manage otherwise. One of the questions to ask yourself as you are crafting a spread, like what is the nature of the question you are asking? Is there a time travel element to it? As in, this is where my issue started, this is where my issue's going? Or is it really about what's happening in the moment? Are you trying to diagnose a current issue? Like what is going on with my friend? Or are you saying what in the past made my friend do what they're doing now? So consider the time travel aspect as you're designing your card. Clarity of intention for you as you design it and as you lay the cards down is essential to the interpretation. Because if you're laying your cards down, you want to say, this is the card that speaks to why my boss is doing what they're doing. You know, you may have a card that says, this is the card that explains what happened in the past that would make my boss do that. But having that kind of clarity is really important, and not just like, personally, I don't generally lean into the like, what happened before, what happens in the future. I think you can afford to be a little bit more specific, and you can be very clear in your head as you lay the cards down. Otherwise, you might find yourself, like if you've got 18 cards down and you're not remembering what was supposed to do what, you'll be awash. There's so much data there. A big question to ask yourself, for example, over here in this reading, the Interrobang, this first card really is like, it's acting almost as the avatar for the querent, right? It's like their significator. You're saying, this card number 1, this is me in the moment and the problem I'm having, and this other card, the crossing card, is in my way, right? So as you're designing your spread, ask yourself, is there an avatar or a significator in the reading? Meaning, this is the card that represents me in the present moment. The Celtic Cross certainly has that. A lot of different traditional readings have a card that stands for the person. If so, if you're into that notion of having an avatar or a significator, as the tarot community calls it, decide how that is selected. Are you picking it out because you looked through and said, I know a lot about this person, and I'm pretty sure that this is the card that represents them and their wonders and their challenges? Or are you handing the deck over to the other person and saying, pick out a card that you think represents you? Or are you just, in the case of if doing this reading, I would leave that up to luck. I'm not saying I picked a card I think is you, because maybe I don't have the big picture. I'm letting the cards pick. So that's a thing to consider as you are trying to build a spread. It may help you design something if you, I did not opt to do this in this one. I made an attempt to do it in this one, where there's this underlying shape. A lot of these spreads have some sort of underlying shape, almost like as if the cards were the stars and the spread was the constellation, the shape that humanity had imagined to create some sense out of this particular assortment of gaseous bodies. So you can say, it's springtime, I really want to do something that kind of feels springy, and like, so maybe I'm going to draw a maypole, and then I'll draw a couple things around it, and those are like people dancing around it. And as you use that visual, let's say, of that maypole with the dancers, that may help you create your different stations of intention, where you say, well, this is clearly the foundation of the maypole, and that speaks to the foundation of the challenge that I'm having. Whereas the very top of the maypole may be, my ambitions for the spring, bursting into summer, whatever it is for you. So using some kind of if you're a visualization person, you may want to sort of draw yourself some kind of underlying image. Is this about babies? You want to draw a baby carriage? Is this about your garden? You want to draw yourself a pumpkin? Whatever it is for you, that gives you a sense of how you might choose to build your spread. That's also going to help you remember when you suddenly are confronted with this elaborate shape that you've made. Well, why did I pick this shape? Oh, because you know that secretly it's supposed to look like Aladdin's lantern or whatever. So coming to some clarity and letting yourself have some whimsy about it, both are super useful. Oh, I also wanted to mention if you're looking for more information on spreads, a very complex and nuanced study can be done with the Mother Peace Tarot, which is specifically very woman-centric, like straight out of the 60s. It's a round tarot deck, and they work a lot with sort of positioning as far as interpretations and so forth. So if you want to go for a subtle twist. And the mother piece is another one I would recommend. Okay, do you have any questions for me? We've got about 5 more minutes, and I'm imagining an out of control zucchini bed spread now. Please. That's when you need one of those squash arches. That's what it is. And then, the zucchini come up and over and the bees fly through. So does anybody have any unanswered questions about working with spreads, developing your own technique, building a spread of your own, and so forth? One of the things I'm keen to encourage you to do, if you want to get your hands dirty, so to speak, I want to encourage you to do some tarot journaling. Like if you're going to do readings, even if it's just to jot down a few keywords for yourself. But if you're into it, then you actually want to map out what you like the spreads themselves, because it's going to help you understand more your progress. How is there a cat in here? You're not supposed to be in here. Pardon me. What are you doing? You're coming in my lap is what you're doing. Oh, sorry. So you're going to want to map out the shape of your spreads as you go, because that's going to be very informative for you. What else can I tell you about that? An excellent tool in the modern era for that is your cell phone. If you're a person who's got would you like to just take this cat? There you go. Trying to get him over here. There you go. Yeah, use your cell phone, because then you can just take pictures of everything. And if you have a little folder for that on your phone, then, or your devices, then you can have a file where you can see them with the dates and sort of see how things progress for you over time. I have somebody sending me a message over here. Oh, somebody just is asking me right now how to get into the meeting. Sorry, I'll have to get to her later. Okay, if you don't have any questions, then I guess we're going to just close it up right about there. I will share this link with folks later as well. And for anybody who wasn't able to get in today, we'll be able to see it. Yeah, this is the first time I've tried to teach this subject, not face-to-face. So I'm totally, as always, I'm delighted to receive your feedback about how to best use all this complicated technology. I didn't really see the point in trying to lay cards down today, because it was more about you being able to see and envision the shape. Oh, can you review cards 3 through 6 of the Interrobang? I sure can. Assuming I've got it right here. I sure can if I have the cardboard. Here's a shout out to Ramaruri Tribal, who is the tribal dance group that meets here at Awesome Town, because this is their cardboard. And one of them works in the hospital. So this is all recycled from the MRI department. So we are able to do a lot of craft projects with it. Okay, so here we are back in the Interrobang, and we find ourselves, here's that station 1 is your situation, and this one that crosses you. This represents the obstacle, literally the crux of the matter, which of course means cross. It is the thing that is crossing you and interfering. Actual, position 3, if you think of it as WTAF, so you've got actual is like what is really actually happening, what is the meat of it that you may not be able to see from where you are. Position 4 is the expletive. That is what is totally wrong with your situation. That is what is most unjust or most out of balance, or most dangerous to you, or most unfair. That is going to be the place where you sort of find the kernel and the meat of that. Then we come over here. The next thing in our Interrobang is the question mark, which is what do you need to get more information about in order to come to some kind of resolution. And that last one is the exclamation point that says, ta-da! This is what you can do about it. This is your answer. Your answer in tarot is always an actionable item. Now that you know what someone's motivations are, what are you going to do about it? Now that you know why you always do that thing you do, how are you going to change if you want to be different? Does that help? Great. Okay, I think that, oh yes. Yes, Jill.
I thought it was really helpful when you talked about the kind of the breakdown of the, 7 or 8 steps of how you initiate the whole thing.
Yes.
I was wondering if in your next email, if you could just give the most brief summary of what those were, because I was trying to jot things down as you talked, but it was going too fast for my hand.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
Uh,
glad to do that.
you know what I'm talking about? The part where you were like, and then I shuffle, and then I
Absolutely.
palm.
Absolutely. Yes, I will give you a bullet point version of my personal like outward ritual and inner protocol.
That would be awesome.
You're welcome to, of course, change it and do everything you need to do with it, but that'll give you some place to start.
Yeah, cool. Thank you.
Absolutely. Of course, I'm glad. Thank you for saying so. Because I know not everyone writes in shorthand, and I figured that if I were to talk as slowly as we would need to talk for you to catch up everything, that it would be an inefficient use of your time. I'm happy to just send that to you in an email.
Cool. Thank you.
I'll do that
This
for
is
everyone.
wonderful. Thank you.
All right. Anybody else have any more questions before we say goodbye? Well, all righty then. Blessed be. I will send you the link with this meeting so that you can watch it again later if you need to. I will piece in all those bullet points for you as some references. And I thank everyone so much for being here. I really appreciate you choosing to spend some of your quarantine with me.
Thank you so much.
Bye.